For over 15 years, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by Play Now, the official sports betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets, starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. With Dave Minuk, with Ezra Ginsburg, I am your host, Drew Mindell, here for the next couple of hours, talking everything to do with the Winnipeg Jets. The draft is 6 days away. The season has officially come to an end with the Florida Panthers yet again raising Lord Stanley's Cup. But here in Winnipeg, it's all about the news from yesterday. Jonathan Toews, effective on July the 1st, will officially become a member of the Winnipeg Jets, signing a one-year contract worth $2 million, and we'll get into the bonuses as we delve deep into this topic throughout the course this morning. Gentlemen, good to see you both. How are things? It feels like we haven't been together in like 3 weeks. I know I missed last week, and I think somebody else missed the week before, so it's nice to get all back together, the three of us, for the first time in a little while.
I think things are good, right, Dave? I usually go first, and I think I have a pretty good vibometer for Dave and I think things are doing pretty good.
Vibometer.
And yeah, the vibes are good. Like, how could they not be, right? Like in the city right now, not just with Johnny Toews signing a contract with the Jets, but also just the weather's nice. It's just a great time of year, especially if you're a teacher, by the way, Drew. I know we were at our school's fun fair, and the teachers are skipping and holding hands because they know they've only got 1 week left of school. Obviously, I have a lot of teachers in my family, so I'm obviously joking here. They deserve the 2 months off. Let me be clear here before we get a lot of hate mail from all the teachers across Winnipeg, guys. Teachers absolutely deserve July and August off. They do phenomenal work. I could not last more than a couple of hours in a classroom. I think Dave could be a pretty good teacher, though.
I don't have the patience.
I don't think Dave's got the temperament for that. Based on our conversation before this show started, I really don't think Dave's got the temperament for that.
I don't think so.
I could see Dave being like a really good PE teacher that like everybody loves and he's their favorite teacher.
Well, maybe that's possible.
Everybody loves the gym teacher. I mean,
that
goes Mr. D. They think about that. Everybody loves Mr. D.
Well, and that gives me an opportunity to shout out my sister Gillian, who's a PE teacher at École Lansdowne in the North End, where, of course, Dave M. hails from.
There you go. So we've covered all the bases, as always. Good morning, Dave. Now that Ezzy is getting all the I guess the report cards are coming due, so Ezzy's sucking up for his kids' report cards is what he's doing.
That's exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah. Good morning to you, Mr. Minuk.
Good morning to you both. Yeah, no, it is busy. It was a busy Friday. We got the news. Kenny Weeb and Elliot Friedman broke the news about Johnny Toews. When I say broke, I guess I should say made it official, but even though it wasn't technically official, because we've known for quite some time, of course, that this was a possibility, but I was excited at the prospect of actually having some news to discuss, something new, not to speculate as we did last week on the show, Drew. Ezzy and I should say, did last week on the show, where we talked about the possibility of Johnny Toews signing a contract with Winnipeg. And we, of course, talked about Nikolaj Ehlers. So today's show will have something concrete to talk about. And that in of itself is exciting. And it's a big day for Winnipeg. It obviously got a lot of attention yesterday when the news came official. So there's a lot of excitement and a lot of buzz. I know some people there's some consternation as well in Jets Nation. But again, we've talked about many times before, no such thing, although this is a lot of bonuses on this one, but generally speaking, no such thing as a bad one-year contract.
Right. That's generally an adage that we have here on the program, is there's no such thing as a bad one-year contract, because it's not going to cause you heartburn for years to come. So let's talk about the contract. You almost have to look at it in sort of two separate contracts to some degree. There's the 1 year, $2 million aspect. That is guaranteed. Jonathan Toews, $2 million will be the salary cap hit for this year. And then, of course, as he plays additional games, there are additional bonuses. And as he, achieves things throughout the course of the season, there are additional bonuses. So after 20 games played, he gets another $550,000. After 30, another $550,000. All the way until after 60 regular season games played, where he will have earned a grand total, I believe, if I can do the simple math, $2.65 million more. Now, that might be on this year's salary cap. That might be on next year's salary cap. You do not know. If the Jets have room to apply it to this year at season's end, that's where any bonuses would get applied. If they don't, it's a carryover to next year's contract. So putting the contract aside for now, we'll get into the details of it, and we'll look at it through the lens of the contract. Your thoughts about Jonathan Toews as a new member of the Winnipeg Jets? Ezzy, I'll start with you.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that I was about to get out my scientific calculator to go over all those bonuses, Drew. I mean, that's one thing, and obviously we'll get into whether Toews is better suited to be a 2C, 3C, or 4C, or maybe even a winger. Like, is that even something that's being considered? I don't know.
They didn't sign him to be a winger. That much I can tell you.
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, with all the uncertainty, he hasn't played in a couple of years. I agree with you, Drew. He's obviously a center, but I'm just saying. I mean, maybe that's something that maybe he's used a little bit on the wing. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there, but it's just cool, guys, that Toews is signing in Winnipeg. It's just a great story, right? Like, yes, he's 37 years old. He's in the back nine of his career, but he's arguably the greatest player this city has ever produced. Like, all due respect to, Mike Keane and Mark Stone and, some of the other excellent, we've produced a lot of good players out of this city, but Jonathan Toews is a surefire Hall of Famer. I don't care what anybody says. He's going into the Hall of Fame as early, most likely, Dave, as he can, right? He's that decorated with the Stanley Cups and the Olympic golds and the World Junior golds and everything like that, right? Like, he has had a phenomenal career. So without getting into whether he's suited to be the 3C over, 2C or whatever like that. It's just a great story. And you have to also factor in, guys, that the Jets rarely get these big name free agents. And even if Jonathan Toews is 37 years old, he's still a big name. Yes, I realize that, he wasn't as effective in his last year with the Chicago Blackhawks. But let's be honest, who was on that team? I mean, that was that was a pretty horrible team, right? So, like, let's just put that aside for a second here. It's just a great story. A kid from St. Vital, he's been off the last 2 years and he gets to play. It's just going to look cool. Like, I keep using that word, but it's just going to look awesome to see him in a Jets jersey. It's just like, it's a fairy tale story. So again, we'll dive deeper into his usage and everything like that and what we kind of expect out of him. But I think this is just a great story, Dave, and possibly it is going to soften the blow if Nikolaj Ehlers moves on to another team.
Well, let me interrupt you there. You said that's going to soften the blow if Ehlers moves on to a different team. I don't agree with that comment because I don't think that, look, you don't know what you're getting in Jonathan Toews, right, Dave? Nobody really knows what version of Jonathan Toews is going to show up. The Jets are obviously hoping that he is, closer to the Jonathan Toews of his prime than the Jonathan Toews of the last couple of years when he was in the NHL and had a minimal impact. No, he's not to say he's going to be as effective as he was when the Blackhawks were winning Stanley Cups, because that would not be a fair expectation. But if Nikolaj Ehlers leaves in a free agency, I don't think that Jonathan Toews can carry the load.
No, and that's not what I was saying, Drew. I apologize if that's what it seemed like I was saying. I just think more so I meant it softened the blow, almost the goodwill with fans.
Well, sure, the business case for signing Jonathan Toews for $2 million is an easy one. From the off-ice dollars and cents perspective, they're
still going to have to replace Nikolaj Ehlers.
Right. They're going to sell $2 million worth of Jonathan Toews merchandise or tickets or whatever it might be. Maybe not $2 million worth of merchandise, but the residual benefit for the box office and the merchandise is going to be significant. So when you think of it through a business lens like that, it makes a lot of sense. Again, we're taking the bonuses out of the equation to start, Dave. But when it comes to the actual on-ice impact and the on-ice performance, Jonathan Toews is not going to be the balm if Nikolaj Ehlers departs, because that's just not a fair position to put Jonathan Toews in.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, I think it's worth noting that, in his last 2 seasons in the NHL, he had 12 goals, 25 assists in 21-22, and then 15 goals, 16 assists in 22-23. That was in 53 games. So 31 points in 53 games. He had those on teams that finished second last and last in the Western Conference, respectively. So, I mean, again, it's like a good goalie who's on a bad hockey team. Yeah, well, exactly. So you have a guy who is still can be effective in a certain role. Again, if the Jets tried to put Jonathan Toews as their first 1C, then there's a big problem. And I mean, one of the things, you and I talked about it, I think 2 weeks ago, Drew, was the fact that you don't know what you're getting. That's why I think it's such a fascinating conversation. And I think it's going to be very speculative until training camp, until we can actually see what Jonathan Toews has in the tank. Until then, I mean, it's interesting. And one of the things I would, we're going to hear from Kevin Cheveldayoff next week because, of course, the draft is coming up. So
I saw him at a local coffee shop yesterday, right before this announcement was made. And Chevy, come on. You didn't give me any sort of hint that this was coming. I feel a little bit slighted. I held the door for you as we were walking out together, and he didn't give me any insight into this. Come on.
We could have been breaking that news on a special edition of Illegal Curve, Drew. That's
live from the parking lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Dave, hold on a second. We need to know what Chevy's order was. What did he have? A latte?
I think it was. I don't remember exactly what he had. I don't think.
Drew, by the way, this is the reason why Kevin wasn't giving you any insight, because you're spilling his his proverbial tea.
I didn't say where he was getting the coffee at. I said a local coffee shop.
Did Chevy have a pastry with him? I feel like Chevy's a pastry guy.
There was no pastry, and there was no pastry for me either. Surprisingly.
I'm shocked. I thought for sure there'd be like some sort of Danish or croissant or something. But anyways,
let's
move on.
Drew's a muffin guy. Drew likes his muffins.
I'm a croissant guy.
Yeah, he's for sure a croissant guy.
Croissants are great.
Yeah, they are. So
Dave actually likes some food. That's the first time that's happened on the show where Dave has said that he liked something that everybody else in the mainstream universe would agree is a good thing to eat.
It's true. That is a fair one. So look, I think that it is a big unknown, but I think there is. Yeah, look, there's a lot of upside. I mean, from his, again, one of the things, look, the Jets have no winning pedigree, as we've talked about. Luke Schenn, when he was on Tampa and they won the Stanley Cup, was a role player. He wasn't a main dog. And whatever you want to say about Jonathan Toews in the 3 Stanley Cups that he won in the Conn Smythe, they don't hand the Conn Smythe out, to someone who doesn't play a big role in the Stanley Cup. So,
well, and our boy Rob Mahoney's got a great comment on for those listening on the podcast. If Toews makes $7 million, that means the Jets have won the cup, and nobody's complaining about that $7 million, right?
Sure. Although the last million is that it would be.
But if he makes
6, they still made the Stanley Cup Finals, which is still pretty good.
Well, but if he makes 5.5, it all he means is he played 60 games.
Yeah, no, I know. We can talk about the bonus structure after. I was a little surprised. I thought it'd be more performance based as opposed to games played. But anyways, like I said, I'm not. We live in this world, and I understand that's our industry, is that we have to make these grand pronouncements. And I cannot tell you how many times I read stuff and I'm like, people are like making, a declarative statement based on with all these intangibles, with all these unknowns. That's why I said, like, I can't tell you if this is a good deal or a bad deal. And I mean, I can't tell you until we're having this conversation at this time next year, but I really can't say because I don't know what he's got left in the tank. And people are like, he hasn't played in 2 years. And I think I made the point, Drew, previously on one of our shows, that for me, a guy with his pedigree doesn't come back. Now, I think I was wrong because I said he's not coming back for the money. Well, that's pretty good money for him to come back for, but he's not coming back to get a $5.5 million payday and to tarnish his legacy.
And guys, we also have, just to jump in, Dave, sorry, and go back to you. We have a recent example of somebody who hasn't played in 2 years and did pretty well. And that's Gabe Landeskog in Colorado. And obviously Toews and Landeskog are not the same player. I mean, it's not apples and apples, but I agree with you. Like, I'm looking at this glass half full, the most optimistic. I don't think Jonathan Toews is going to score 80 points and be the savior on the second line for the second line center. But I think based on his career and based on we know that he's a fitness freak, right? He's always been a fitness freak throughout the just like Drew, he's been a fitness freak for his entire life. So he's going to be in good shape. I don't think that's the question. But I think honestly, what the conversation that we're going to get into is where's he best suited? Like, is it third line center or is it fourth line center? Because I think he can be a placeholder as second line center while Adam Lowry's out. But I don't know if you're expecting a 37-year-old Jonathan Toews to be your second line center for 82 games.
Like, and just to go back to the parallel with Landeskog, I mean, Landeskog missed an extra year. Now he's 32 versus 37, so there's a disparity in the ages. But I mean, again, that's not an insignificant amount of time, right? So I mean, like I said, like we don't know. That's the problem. And so like there's so many people who are saying it's going to look like this. We don't know where he's going to play. I mean, that we don't. People are saying he's not 2C. We have no idea.
I'm going to bet Winnipeg.
Well, we know that, Drew. That's true. We didn't until yesterday know where he was going to play. Now in Winnipeg specifically, we do not know where he's going to fit. Sorry, let me
with
correct
the Jets
myself.
and not the Moose would be my guess.
Yes, that is true. So, I mean, let's be realistic. The Jets were not a face-off animal by any stretch of the match of the imagination, and that's an area of his expertise. He's excellent. So that is the area where, like I said, I think this is one of those moves that you bring a guy in for him to rub off on the rest of the team, whether it's what to do in certain situations. Because as I've said on many occasions on one of our shows, this team doesn't have a ton of winning pedigree in the playoffs. They have it in the regular season. There's no question, one of the top winning teams in the last couple of years. But for me, what Toews brings, it's that opportunity to teach Cole Perfetti's, the Gabriel Villardis, the Mark Scheifele's. Like, he is going to bring a wealth of knowledge. And even if he is doing it in almost like a coach player capacity, boys, I think there's going to be a huge benefit. So again, I don't know. I'm not going to sit here on June 21st and tell you that's exactly, the longest day of the year, what exactly he's going to look like for the Winnipeg Jets. But I can tell you that I think he will be a net benefit. And I really do. Well, I shouldn't say that because I just said I wasn't going to do that, but I think that there is going to be a net benefit in terms of what he brings to these young players and the team overall. And again, like I said, 2 years the last 2 years of his career were on a bad Chicago team. So perhaps the next year of his career on a good Jets team elevates what he was able to do. And even despite the time off,
I'm going to draw your attention to Elliot Friedman's 32 Thoughts, the written version, which was published late last night, probably close to 11 o'clock last night.
Not in the morning papers because I had already done them. Sorry, Elliot.
Okay, well, I'm sure they'll get on the website later on than today. But, number 9, so point number 9 in the 32 Thoughts article, says the following, quote, Winnipeg hopes Jonathan Toews' arrival entices Nikolaj Ehlers to stay. It's more likely he tests the market July 1st. He's in no rush, and the Jets are formulating backup options just in case. So you can see, again, there's Elliot. I like 32 Thoughts. I like Elliot. There's not a ton of information there, but it is just it does give you a glimpse a little bit into the Jets' mindset that they are, of course, hoping that this attracts Nikolaj Ehlers back to Winnipeg. No doors have been closed. We've heard that it's more likely than not that Ehlers does explore free agency, but at the same time, in the same vein, it's not Mitch Marner in Toronto where there's 0% chance he returns to the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's not like this is a bad blood situation, a bad relationship. And the Jets, can now point to the signing of Jonathan Toews and say to Nikolaj Ehlers, look, here's another quality player, we hope, the Jets hope, that's going to be an option if you stick around here in Winnipeg. Perfetti, Toews, and Ehlers, something along those lines. Whatever sort of mix that works out to be, is that they're trying. These are all, it's not this move doesn't happen in a vacuum. That there is, the Jets hope, a domino effect that might make it a little more appealing to Nikolaj Ehlers to stick around for another number of years come July 1st or before then.
Right. And just to kind of rephrase what you're saying, I guess the question is, does Jonathan Toews signing in Winnipeg change Nikolaj Ehlers' mind at all? That's what you're saying, right, Drew? Yeah, and I have absolutely no idea, right? Because we've said this all along. We know Nikolaj Ehlers has spent his entire, 10-year career with the Jets. And we know that he likes living in Winnipeg. He's got lots of friends. I know that he's very close to Adam Lowry, for example, because I've seen them walking dogs together before around River Heights. So Nikolaj Ehlers look, I've said it on the record before. I really hope that he does sign with Winnipeg because, as you guys know, I've kind of personally been the biggest, Ehlers fan probably on this show. I mean, the guy is just an incredible player, but it's business the way I look at it at this point. And there are some similarities between, I think, Mitch Marner and Nikolaj Ehlers, not apples and apples, but I mean, I think there's a desire for the team to re-sign the player, but I think there's also a desire for the player to see what's out there. And Nick Ehlers, I think, is entitled to a big contract. I mean, this is a guy who everybody knows around the league what Nick Ehlers can do, right? Like, it's not like he's been this like Jets little secret and he's this underappreciated player, right? Like, the Jets just won the President's Trophy and Nick Ehlers was third on the team in scoring and had a big part in the team having the best power play in the league, right, boys? So it's tough to say if Toews moves the needle, so to speak, right?
But it helps. I mean, look, Nikolaj Ehlers has succeeded for the last number of years without having what I would describe as a bona fide centerman. With all due respect to Vlad Nemestikov, we all know that.
Good luck getting him on the show now, Drew.
Well, I apologize if that's going to be the deal breaker.
I think we had Vlad on a couple years ago.
We did. Dave and I chatted with him a couple years ago after I think it was the loss to Vegas, if I recall correctly, right?
Yeah, it seems about right. 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah, I think that was right. In any event, I mean, look, everything that the Jets do, this is all, hey, Nikolaj, did you see this? Hey, Nikolaj, do you remember this? Hey, Nikolaj, look at this. But what I think is also important is the Jets are still making contingency plans if Ehlers goes. As you heard Nikolaj, as you saw in that
contingency plan, fill this spot.
Well, because you can't go with Toews and Perfetti and whomever on the Jets roster is not going to be sufficient. I mean, that's the truth of the matter, is because you can't expect Jonathan Toews to be a play driver, at this stage with all the uncertainty surrounding him.
How do we know, Drew? We don't know.
Well, we don't know, but you can't expect it. You can't bank on it. You can't go into the season with that being your plan, that Jonathan Toews is all of a sudden going to do this heavy lifting in replacement of Nikolaj Ehlers. And Cole Perfetti, who's certainly shown more signs of being able to do that in the latter part of the year, still needs somebody to ride shotgun with him on the other side. I mean, it's not, you can't go with Toews and Perfetti and uncertainty.
Well, our friend Murat Atesh of The Athletic today, in his latest column, was saying even without Ehlers, there are multiple viable combinations. One version of the Jets' top 9 forward group is as follows: Connor Scheifele, Velarde, and stop me if you've heard that one before, Perfetti, Toews, and Iafallo, and Niederreiter, Lowry, Nemestikov. It's not ideal, but it's solid.
It's not, though. I mean, I
wouldn't say that's solid.
Well, it was fresh in my mind because I read Murat's thing today.
I read it this morning also.
There's a number 27 that is glaring missing out of that group.
I'm just telling you what I read. I mean, I agree with you.
No, I know, Dave, but I mean, the Jets still have, the Jets losing Ehlers doesn't make them a bad team. That's not what I'm saying. Like, losing one guy doesn't instantly make you, they're still going to be a playoff team, and they're still going to be, I think, a top team in the Central Division, but you're losing a guy that is one of the most important, impactful players on your team. And to Drew's point, look, I think Toews, if Ehlers, let's say Ehlers re-signs, I think Ehlers, Toews, Perfetti is a very intriguing line.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But there's a big uncertainty with how much does Toews have left in the tank? Is he able to distribute the puck? Like, obviously we know Ehlers is a type of guy that he likes to have the puck. He likes to use his speed coming through the zone, everything like that, right?
Let's say he's got nothing in the tank. If you have Ehlers, Toews, and Perfetti, and there's nothing, Toews can bring nothing to the table, which I don't expect to be the case. You at least have evidence and history of the team succeeding with Ehlers, Nemesnikov, and Perfetti, along with that top line of Scheifele, Connor, and Velarde. You have history of that happening. There's no history of the Jets would just be a one-line offensive team without Ehlers or a reasonable equivalent on that second line. You would be really thin offensively. I think you could still succeed because I think you still have pretty good depth, but you'd be really, really thin offensively.
Well, Drew, they are having a fire sale in Pittsburgh, so maybe they can go get that Crosby guy and add him to the mix, right? Ezzy, maybe have Crosby be. I mean, you want a 2C who's playing at the highest level.
I don't know what you're talking about. What fire sale?
Well, no, apparently the Pittsburgh Penguins are open for business.
They're the only team that is really talking rebuild, whereas everybody else in the league is, even the teams that have been tire fires for years now are talking about trying to begin to improve.
That Kyle Dubas first 2 years of him trying to keep the Penguins as a Stanley Cup contender, that went pretty well.
No, and I'll be clear that Crosby's name was not part of the mix of guys who were available, but that would be quite something if they had Crosby in the mix. But anyways, no, I mean, look, I don't think there's any question that you're not finding Nikolaj Ehlers. That's why I kind of laughed when they said contingency plans. Like, well, there is no contingency plan because your team instantly gets worse, and you just don't have. Again, let's be clear, Nikolaj Ehlers isn't a 100-point player. I mean, that's the thing that's worth noting. I mean, he's a guy who's maxed out in the 60s. We're not talking about a guy who's gotten to 80, 90, even 100 points. So I mean, it's kind of mind-blowing.
That was third. That was good enough for third on a President's Trophy winning team, Dave.
Absolutely. Well, they did a lot by committee, as he. So I'm not suggesting otherwise, but I'm just saying, like, it's crazy.
And if he was on the first line, he'd get more points too.
Well, sure. And he was on the first power play, and that's one of the areas I was going to say that, unfortunately for the Jets, if you don't have Ehlers, is going to take a big hit this year, is to not have his ability on the power play to kind of allow them to set up and establish. And again, there's so many question marks, and the door's not shut for the Jets and Ehlers. So I'm not sitting here writing the end of a decade of Nikolaj Ehlers, because it sounds like Winnipeg is still very much in contention. So again, like I said, it's speculative at best, but it's a problem in the sense that there isn't that replacement down below with the Moose that you're going to say, okay, this guy, they've got some good kids who are, going to be in the mix for that sort of bottom six, whether it's a Nikita Chibrikov coming up and replacing a Mason Appleton or something of that nature,
right?
Or even a Parker Ford, whatever. But my point is, you're not going to have a guy who is ready to, again, unless Brad Lambert takes some sort of giant. I know the entire Moose team took a step back this year, but if he's 8 years younger than Nikolaj Ehlers. So I don't expect that you're going to say, even though they have a very similar skill set, that Brad Lambert's going to come in and take over and do what Nikolaj Ehlers does. So, again, fortunately,
does or does
either one. But the point is that that's a problem. So, I mean, for right now, if you're the Jets, again, like I said, I don't know how you see that replacement option, but we'll see.
July 1st is right around the corner. We'll have all the latest regarding the Winnipeg Jets between now and then, and after the July 1st free agency day opens up.
Our home and native land. You said July 1st.
It doesn't mean you have to sing at any point in time ever. Quick, brief, minor trade to announce. Joe Veleno going to the Seattle Kraken. Andre Burakovsky going to the Chicago Blackhawks. That announced this morning. When we come back, Mitchell Clinton joins us for more.
I would have been better off not having that 10 seconds of my life, but go on.
Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show presented by Play Now. Mitchell Clinton joins us up next.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Center. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Center. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you on a Saturday morning. So is Mitchell Clinton, Winnipeg Jets radio analyst on 680 CJOB. Coffee, spilling. Are you okay? Do we need to call somebody? Do you have some sort of polysporin to put on the burn? Mitchell, we need to know, are you okay?
I'm just fine. Yeah, I was all proud of myself because I actually timed my morning out really well, and I'm using my wife's office to chat with you guys today. So on top of the fact that I nearly spilled on myself, I almost got it on her desk and stuff. So it really could have been a whole lot worse. But I've avoided that bit of adversity this morning, so we're all good.
Well, thank goodness that catastrophe was averted. I was worried when I saw that tweet or that X or whatever you want to call it. Good morning, Mitchell. Thank you for joining us. Now, before we delve even deeper into the Winnipeg Jets, you golfed with Ezzy this week?
Yes, I did.
How was that experience? Do we need to stage some sort of intervention? Do we need some sort of counseling?
No, I mean he was a solid contributing member of the team. We jumped into the Manitoba Bison's hockey tournament this week out at Larders, and it was awesome. We had a great time, and I think he was kind of downplaying the abilities early on because he was just saying, hey, first round of the year, been busy, had a lot going on. Absolutely, no, not a big deal. And then I think we used his drive pretty early on, and he made a big birdie putt for the squad. So no, he was a big contributing member. I think as a team, we just missed the podium, Ezzy. Is that right? I think
I think we missed it by one stroke. Yeah.
Yeah, naturally.
Yeah.
That's usually
but yeah, you're being very generous, Mitch. Mitch is an unbelievable golfer. I was kind of thinking of who I could compare Mitch to. I think Mitch, you're like a young Ernie Els, is who I would say. But Mitch is really good. I'm not being I'm being very honest here.
Hyperbole?
Like a two. Are you a 2 handicap, Mitch?
I started the year as a 2. I've had a pretty good run the last couple of weeks, so I'm down to a 0.6.
Oh, wow.
That's what I'm saying, Drew. I know Drew can hit the ball a little bit too,
not
but
like that.
Mitch is really good. He definitely elevated our team, and shout out to the Bisons. That was a really fun tournament.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing I'll say is I shot my personal best kind of early in June, and I was playing with Tyler Esquivel, who a lot of people might know is with the Winnipeg Jets content team, and tap in on the 18th hole, and we knew that it was going to be a personal best for me. He just goes, peaking in early June, good for you.
You're the one who should be on the Manitoba Golf Tour, not Weeb. Kenny doesn't need that. You're obviously the golfer in the group.
Very exclusive tour, that Manitoba
exactly. So speaking about contributing to the team, obviously the Jets have a new contributor to the team, that being Jonathan Toews for the upcoming season. Contract hasn't officially been filed, but the announcement was made yesterday. I guess your excitement level, or what you're most looking forward to seeing about Jonathan Toews as a member of the Winnipeg Jets.
I'm excited for it for a couple of reasons. One, I mean, everybody's kind of talking about how it's a kind of a full circle moment, not only for him, but his family and the National Hockey League in Winnipeg. So absolutely, that's probably your lead storyline in that regard. But it actually brings me back to my first day with the team ever. I think my official start date with True North was back in November of 2013. It was like the 4th, but on the 2nd, the team was playing against the Chicago Blackhawks at home, and that was Toews' first game in Winnipeg. I think he had been injured. There's a lot of stuff going on, and that was his first one back. And I just remember it being quite the, I don't know if media members can have a welcome to the NHL moment. That was mine, being in that scrum. So it'll be really cool to see, once he, gets, acclimated with the organization and everything. But, ever since, Winnipeg's name was kind of in those conversations in and around him, it's kind of always been this intriguing thing. Of course, also with, Adam Lowry probably not being ready to go for the start of the season, given the surgery that he had. So that center position becomes even more important. And so we'll kind of see how it goes. I know I've seen some analysis of people slotting him in right into 2C right away. We'll see kind of how camp goes. This guy hasn't played for a couple of years, obviously, but I mean, the resume speaks for itself. I'm excited to see him come in. I'm excited to see that number 19 ripping around. I'm excited to see what number David Gustafson's going to wear because of it. we'll kind of see how it all plays out. But overall excitement. I mean, anytime you're adding somebody with that kind of pedigree, even if he hasn't played for a couple of years, I think there will have to be a little bit of patience in terms of getting back up to those game reps. He'll have to get those game reps back under his belt again. But just for him as an individual as well, being able to get himself back to the National Hockey League, given everything that's gone on for him health-wise, is obviously a great story as well.
Mitch, how important do you think it is to have the Stanley Cup resume that Jonathan Toews has, right? Because last year, obviously, the Jets brought in Luke Schenn in part because of the fact that he had the 2 Stanley Cups and he had all the playoff experience, right? In addition to the fact that he's a physical defenseman and blocks shots and everything like that. But, Toews with 3, not just 3 Stanley Cups, but, all the gold with Team Canada. Like, how important is that just to have someone that has, like, his resume must be at least 25 pages.
Yeah, it must be nice. Hey, I mean, I don't think you can devalue that in any way, even with the couple of years off, because you think of, the Florida Panthers go and win back-to-back Stanley Cups, but I would be curious to know how many times over the course of this season or this postseason run that they just had that they leaned on a lot of those experiences. And having one guy in your room that has that experience, that's one thing. Of course, they can put out some advice or whatever, but the way that Chicago has won it over those 3 cups in 5 or 6 years there in the early 2010s. I mean, they had to do it a bunch of different ways, beat a bunch of different teams, and then there's the dramatic one against Boston where they basically won the cup in the last 26 seconds in that third period. So they've won it a whole lot of different ways. So I would imagine those experiences, along with the Olympics, the World Cups, kind of stick with you as Jonathan Toews. And even talking to a player like Josh Morrissey, after 4 Nations, and as much as, it didn't end the way that he would have liked in terms of being able to play in the final, he said there's a lot of experiences that come out of that are so invaluable to you as your career goes on. So, maybe, you have a really tough loss in the playoffs and you find a way to bounce back, something that Winnipeg did really well, I thought, over the course of the 2 rounds that they were in the Stanley Cup playoffs this year. So there's always those little things, those little ways to bond the group together, little activities, little, finding ways to go for dinners, all those little things away from the ice. And then you have the in-room and on-ice presence too. Like, there's nothing that's going to really surprise him or be, the moment will be too big for him just because he's kind of been on those moments before.
So Mitchell, from your perspective, do you think that something like this, which is, again, they didn't bring him in to teach players. I mean, obviously there's going to be a role, and I've talked about that just before we brought you on. He's going to have an important teaching benefit to some of the players in this organization. There's no question about that. But again, this isn't like, let's get the young players of a middling team to that next level. This is a championship team. It's a team that has championship on their mind. Do you think a signing like this can have an impact on Nikolaj Ehlers potentially? Because we know obviously that he is set to test free agency. All indications are on July 1st. So from your perspective, do you think this could move the needle a little bit for him in that regard?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure. Obviously, only Nikolaj can speak for himself in that regard. I would imagine the Winnipeg Jets hope so. I mean, you look back to the types of things that Kevin Cheveldayoff was saying at the end of the season in terms of trying to put their best foot forward and trying to make Nikolaj Ehlers another one of those Winnipeg Jets for life. And at the same time, these are kind of the conversations. Nikolaj Ehlers' name comes up a lot over the course of the chats that you have, whether you're out for groceries or whatever it may be. And obviously he's gotten to the point where in his career where he's earned the opportunity if he wants to take a look at what's out there. Of course, the challenge is, maybe Winnipeg's offer is still the best after July 1, but maybe things have happened and now it's a little bit more difficult to make that deal work. Who knows? There's so many variables that go into it. But I'd imagine for Nikolaj and even for Winnipeg, just because, Toews comes in, it doesn't necessarily change the fact that Winnipeg's going to probably, I would imagine, keep looking around, keep seeing what's out there. Because like we said, it's as much as, Toews has that great resume, doesn't necessarily guarantee a 2C spot. It doesn't necessarily guarantee that everything's going to go swimmingly. You're always trying to find ways to make your team better, right? So for Nikolaj, of course, he would look at that and be like, maybe this is a style of game that I can play with. But we'll see. And, for Nikolaj, of course, you wish the best. However this works out, he's always been, and you guys would know this, he's always been great to speak with, whether on camera or off camera. He's a super nice guy. So however it goes, and obviously Winnipeg Jets fans hope he's still got that logo on after July 1st. But we'll see how it all plays out.
Mitchell Clinton, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. The show is presented, of course, by our friends at Play Now. Mitchell, as sitting here now that, the season has ended, it's been, a few weeks, you're able to sort of step back and consider the whole year and consider where this team is moving forward. Obviously, a successful season, President's Trophy winning team. The mantra last year was 10 or 15% more, and the Jets certainly delivered on that. What do you think the off-season messaging is among the players themselves, internally, for the Jets to, go beyond what they did this year? How do they take that sort of next step? How do they win that second round series? How do they put their names up there with the elite of the elite in this league? What is sort of the driving mindset, do you think, for the players this offseason?
I think it comes down to details. I think they're still going to come in with that similar kind of thought pattern of trying to find a way to be X% better. I think that's just a really good way to go about things, whether you're a professional hockey player or otherwise. Just find a way to get better every day. And obviously for players that are at that level, sometimes it's very incremental, but that can always make the difference. The phrase that always stands out to me is one that, Scott O'Neill said, whether it was in broadcast meetings, whether it was during media, whether it was at press conferences, whatever it may be. He always just said the thing about the playoffs and the message that he was really trying to get through to everybody was that every shift matters, right? So one of the things that I think Winnipeg might look at detail-wise, especially when it comes to road games, because they were quite good at this at home, but on the road, it was those 2 goals in 3 minutes against, or 3 goals in 8 minutes against, finding a way to, like they do on home ice, just kind of quell that momentum right where it's at. Because hey, look, I remember going into St. Louis this year for those games, and they were always talking about, their home fans and everything, and, how excited they were to get back there, even though they were down 2-0. And you're thinking in your head, what is this going to be in comparison to the whiteout? And there were times Paul Edmonds and I had a really tough time during the start of the game hearing each other through our headsets. That's how loud it was. So kudos to St. Louis for that, because it really created a tough atmosphere for Winnipeg, and they rode that in game 3, absolutely. But you saw in game 4, they were able to score a bunch of goals in a few minutes, and that just really kind of turned the tide in a lot of games. And that, I think, is probably that next step for Winnipeg, is just finding a way to take something that they're so good at home, and in the regular season they did really well at home and on the road. Find a way to stop that momentum there. Don't let the opposition find a way to really flip a game from a 1-0 Jets lead and make it 3-1. Now look at Florida. That's something Florida was very good at. They would just, hang around. Edmonton maybe would go find a way to get themselves back into the game, and then bang, bang, Florida's up by 2 again. And so I look at that. It's almost riding the momentum in games, and everybody individually will want to find a way to be better. Absolutely. That's kind of the nature of things when you don't win the Stanley Cup. But I look at it from a team perspective. It's finding those little ways to just make that those momentum swings a little bit lower, a little bit more even, just so that, a game that you're very much in, like Winnipeg was for a number of those road games, all of a sudden doesn't get away from you.
Mitch, obviously, Johnny Toews, that was the big news yesterday. That's what everybody in the city and really the hockey world is talking about right now. And you forget that, the Jets have all of these RFAs that, they need to sign, right? And I'm not going to ask you to speculate, obviously, but Dylan Sandberg, Gabe Vilardi, those are the big ones. And the question I was going to ask you is about more so the new core of this team, right? Because obviously Mark Scheifele, Connor Hellebuck locked up. We're expecting Kyle Connor to be locked up long-term as well. But I mean, these pieces, Dylan Sandberg, Gabe Vilardi, I mean, when you're talking about Gabe Vilardi, I was kept saying, and I'm sure you and Paulie on CJOB were talking about, like, he was the secret weapon on that first power play unit this year. I mean, teams just didn't know how to handle him. And when you're talking about Dylan Sandberg, I think finally I was talking to you about on the golf course about Sandberg. I feel like I talk about Sandberg every day. But I mean, I think he is no longer an underrated defenseman in the NHL. I think people have started to realize just how good of a shutdown defenseman he is. So I guess more so getting back to the question, what are you expecting both these guys to be long-term contracts? And I guess we're not going to speculate on when those contracts are going to come. But if you want to give us a sneak peek, Mitch, and maybe give Dave a heads up when that contracts are going to be signed, that would be nice.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this the other day about how Winnipeg would be preparing for Dylan Sandberg's representatives to come in with that record for the Winnipeg Jets when he was injured with that, that broken bone in his foot. That's probably like the first piece that they're going to bring. And obviously those two players that you mentioned play very different roles and on the team, but yeah, it was one of those things where Dylan Sandberg gets that top 4 opportunity and it was unbelievable. Really, there's a certain aspect of he's always been really good defensively. That's kind of been his bread and butter. He's got that willingness to get out block shots on the PK. But the thing that stood out to me as the year kind of went on was his ability to also get up in the play, because when you're playing with those top 6 guys like Sandberg would be in that top 4 situation, there's also a certain expectation that you're going to be able to get up in the play and help create as well, right? And that can sometimes be a little bit of a challenge or a big jump, and kind of the part of being a top 4 defenseman that you kind of go, oh, this is now part of my job too, as opposed to maybe being a 5-6 where you're really focused on D. Yeah, everybody wants to get up in the play. That's kind of how Winnipeg plays, but there's a little bit more of an expectation of the level of play, or the level of creation that your forwards are kind of expecting from you there. And I thought Dylan Sandberg did really well with that. And Gabe Vilardi, I mean, I was just gutted for him when he got hurt late in the regular season, because everything was going the way that he wanted in terms of health. And, the offense was producing. That Connor Scheifele-Vilardi line was rolling right along. There was so much positive going on there. And then, he kind of said early in the playoffs, when he did and was able to come back, it took him a little bit to get going again. And that's kind of what you would expect. So, yeah, obviously two very important deals that I know Kevin Cheveldayoff and the management group want to get done as quickly as possible. But as always, there's processes to these things, right? Like, I was looking at it when last training camp when Cole Perfetti was kind of sitting up for those first couple of days. Those RFA deals, especially if arbitration is not involved, can sometimes drag a little bit longer than probably both sides would like. But there's always that process, right? And Kevin Cheveldayoff always talks about that process of, you kind of have to handle things as they come. And obviously you deal with the UFA situation. And at the same time, you're also trying to make sure that you're prepared for the draft. But you're also wanting to get these 2 guys that we just talked about signed. So there's a lot going on, I would imagine, for the management group. But a lot of these things take care of themselves in due time. And I don't know, my anticipation, especially given how, both Sandberg and Vilardi spoke of, being in Winnipeg and playing here, my hope and my expectation would be that they'll end up here. What the deals look like, I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, from a team standpoint, you'd love to have them done, have that cost certainty done as long as possible, but we'll see how it goes.
Well, to your point about arbitration, both Sandberg and Vilardi, of course, are arbitration eligible.
Right.
You think that's almost an advantage to the Jets in this case? Both. It's not. I mean, I don't think any of us would expect it'll get all the way to an arbitration hearing, but that at least moves up your timeline to get a contract done. That seems like it would be beneficial to some extent.
Yeah, like the phrase that always stands out to me is deadlines spur action, right? Like whether you're a student trying to get a homework project done or you're trying to sign two very important players, right? So,
hang on, you were supposed to finish your work as a student?
I procrastinated a little bit, yeah. But yeah, like I would imagine that would be part of it too, right? Like you know what your deadlines are, and Kevin Cheveldayoff and Larry Simmons and Craig Heisinger, everybody involved, you know, they would know exactly when they need to really get going on things. My thought is that, you know, these are two players that have really kind of came in and fit like a glove. Obviously, Sandberg's drafted and developed, and Velarde came in on a trade, but they've really kind of cemented themselves in that room, and they're a big part of what makes Winnipeg and that room go together and work, right? So that I would look forward to those things getting done as quickly as possible. But as we all know, those are always tricky conversations and ultimately, like, yeah, we can always talk about, you know, taking that hometown discount and help the team out and everything. I've always kind of had in the back of my mind, this is also a very finite career for these guys in terms of being able to play. So I never, you know, would fault a player for trying to get an extra dollar, you know, and try to set themselves up a little bit just to make sure they're ready to go. But there's always a number that they find in the middle. It's just a matter of when, I would hope.
You know, Mitchell, we're focused on the team as it's currently constructed, but there is hope springs eternal with the draft. And of course, it's going to be a different draft, this decentralized draft with some folks being in LA and most people being in their home bases. From your perspective, how are you getting ready for this with the Jets having the 28th overall pick right now?
It's so, like late first round picks are so challenging, right? Because even when, you know, Winnipeg was picking earlier in the draft, you know, you think back to the earlier years, it was hard to predict where they were going to go even then because so much could happen. So yeah, in terms of like prepping names and whatnot, yeah, like I'm looking at a few just to, you know, be prepared. But I think the last couple of times that Winnipeg's had a first round pick, I haven't been anywhere close in terms of where they ended up going. So as much as I try, they won't let me in that scouting room. But I think at the same time, it's going to be such a different feel, right? Like not having all those team reps in that same area, and, you know, your insiders or whoever on the floor being like, oh, this GM's talking to this GM. There's going to be, I guess, a little bit more of a secretive aspect because they're all going to be talking to each other. You know that's how it's going to go. It's just not going to be as plain and simple and right in front of you. So, and then you always wonder, is that first round pick in play, because you don't know what you want to do, right? So, like it's the draft is going to be so. I'm just almost taking like the back seat and just watching this one, how it all unfolds, because there's so much that's up in the air. And then I heard Steve Mayer on a podcast. He works for the NHL, kind of heads up the content and presentation, and he was saying how, you know, teams are going to have their reps go up and they've got a few secrets in their back pockets. And now I'm intrigued by that too. So you never know which team's going to have that Celine Dion moment from the Vegas draft, if you will. So like it's so tough to prepare and try to find a little section of the whether it's North American skaters or the international skaters to see where Winnipeg might end up. But as always, that amateur scouting crew does a pretty good job of finding those diamonds.
Just sorry quickly. Drew's got a question, but we had Craig Button on last week, Mitch, and Drew wasn't on the show. But Dave and I think we asked Craig about 7 or 8 prospects, and then we were joking with Craig, like, there's a good chance none of these guys are taken by the Jets at 28th overall, right?
Yeah,
so you could easily read like 30 different scouting reports of 30 different players, and you still won't know who the Jets are going to take. Yeah, exactly.
That's always how it works. You know, Mitchell, I was looking at the bottom of the Jets roster, and, you know, there's going to be some churn there. There usually is churn on most teams' bottoms of the roster and from one season to the next. We know Rasmus Kupari is already signed to overplay in Switzerland. We know Appleton and Tanev are both unrestricted free agents. Are you expecting sort of for the start of next year to be sort of opportunities for some of the younger players who might have put in their time at the AHL level, or guys who get signed, maybe not on July 1st necessarily, but the Jared Anderson Dolans who come into a new organization because the team sort of sees something within them? Are you expecting to sort of see that sort of play itself out in training camp battles and opportunities for jobs to be won, particularly lower in the Jets lineup for the start of next season?
Yeah, for sure. Nothing's guaranteed in that league. And like the thing with that too is Jared Anderson Dolan was one of those players that I was kind of really intrigued by when his name came up. I just remember, obviously covering him as he kind of worked through his NHL and AHL career, right? So he comes into Winnipeg and has the injury in training camp, and then so that kind of gets put on the back burner. But credit to him, kind of worked his way back into the lineup back at the NHL level. And I thought, obviously scored in the playoffs on that double deflection, he and Morgan Barron, but really found a way to kind of make a role for himself. Ultimately ends up coming out of the lineup when Winnipeg got fully healthy. But, I think it's more about trying to find, whether it's, similar players to maybe what we saw at the start of the season prior to the trades being done or whatever it may be. It's more about what identity that Scott Arniel and the organization wants that fourth line to be. And I think, you look at somebody like Morgan Barron, who obviously ended up in the middle of the ice by the end of the season. I just look at it that big, hard to play against, but he can move at the same time and has a little bit of finish there. I think that was depth for Winnipeg was such an important aspect of what made them President's Trophy winners over the course of the regular season. So I think on that fourth line, yes, you absolutely want guys that can be physical and can move. But if Winnipeg could get even, a couple more goals out of that spot, that's going to be even more important. We saw the role that depth played for Edmonton being able to get to the Stanley Cup final, the depth for the Florida Panthers to ultimately be able to get their back-to-back Stanley Cup titles. So that line, we always joke about, in Canada, the conversation around the fourth line right winger and who it's going to be is always so heated, but that's why, right? Like these games always come down to those little details. So I'll be curious because over the last number of seasons, Kevin Cheveldayoff has usually brought in a couple of different faces. I think back to like Nate Thompson and Trevor Lewis back in the bubble year, right? So, and that gave that fourth line a certain identity as well. So we'll see what the look might be come training camp, but that's certainly a spot on the roster that I've kind of got circled because it's always an intriguing battle there.
Mitchell Clinton is a Winnipeg Jets analyst. You hear him on the radio broadcast with our good friend Paul Edmonds.
Maybe we should just start calling Mitch 0.6.
I was going to say, with that kind of handicap, I want to see that number be lower. When you rejoin the show later on this summer or something like that. You got to keep working on that. Get that number down there.
It's funny, Drew, because Mitch's handicap and my blood alcohol level is the same when we're on the golf.
I like that.
On that note, have a great Saturday, Mitch. Thanks for joining us, buddy.
Yeah, see you later, guys.
Thanks, care. Mitch. There he goes, Mitch Clinton joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Ezzy made a funny. Good job, Ezzy. That was a funny one.
Mitch can smoke that ball. Let me he's one of the best golfers I've ever played with. He's that good.
Yes, if he's that scratch of a golfer, there's no question about it. It's always impressive, when you watch a golfer, you play with a golfer of that quality, and you're like, oh, we're playing two very, very different games. You don't make a mistake, and I just managed to shank one off the heel and hit my playing partner that's 3 feet to the left of me. Different games entirely.
I'd like to report, though, Drew, in that golf tournament, I played 17 holes of the 18 holes because I had to leave and get my kids from daycare. I didn't lose a ball. And anytime I don't lose a ball, to me, that's a sign that I'm playing pretty well, right?
Good job on your part there, Mr. Ginsburg. When we come back, more Jets talk, more on Toews, more on Ehlers, more on everything to do with the hometown team. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show live on a Saturday morning.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now. Big thanks to Mitch Clinton for joining us. I am your host, Drew Mandel. Dave Manouk is to my right, I guess on the screen. Ezra Ginsburg is in the bottom middle. Marty Biron is set to join us at the bottom of the hour. Always love to catch up with our good friend Marty. Nice to see so many faces, familiar faces in the chat this morning. If you haven't already done so, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you turn your notifications on. That way you'll be able to join us next Saturday when we're back live for the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Coming up, in a few weeks' time. We still got a few more weeks to go, but we are going to be on our summer hiatus coming around middle of July. So be sure to be subscribed and joining us on Saturday mornings between now and then before we all disappear for about 6-7 weeks. Returning, of course, on Banjo Bowl Saturday like we do each and every year here with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Jonathan Toews, his signing, the big news of the week in the land of the Winnipeg Jets. Let's talk about the bonuses aspect of it. So we know it's $2 million this year, $550,000 if he plays 20 games, another $550,000 if he plays 30, 40, 50, 60. If the Jets make the playoffs and Toews plays 50, that's worth another $500,000. The Jets win the first round and Jonathan Toews plays 50% of those games, that's $250,000. You just keep going from there. I'm not going to read through all of them. What about the bonuses that are part of this contract? Are you surprised at the significant bonus money that's available here, upwards of $5 million available to Jonathan Toews if he and the Jets go as far as they possibly can next season, Ezzy?
Guys, for next year, if I do 20 post-game shows, can I get $550? And then if I do 30 post-game shows, can I get another $550, similar to Johnny Toews' contract? No, I mean, I think it's more money than I thought. I'll be honest with you. When I saw the breakdown, and credit to Dave M, he was all over it. Had it posted on illegalcurve.com really quickly. Shout out to Kenny Weeb, obviously, who was breaking all the news with Elliott, right? I was expecting guys like a 1-year, $1 million contract with more performance bonuses, right? Like, if Jonathan Toews scores 20 goals and 50 points, he gets $1 million or, whatever. But I think, this tells you, I don't know, I don't speak for you guys, but I think this tells you that there was some other interest in Jonathan Toews, right? Like, I don't think you sign a contract like this, boys, unless there's another team. And obviously Chris Johnston, good friend of the show, he was saying that Colorado was the other team, right? So,
and Elliot Friedman also reports in 32 Thoughts, again, that was published late last night, that Tampa Bay was also heavily involved in wanting to get Jonathan Toews.
No,
so
we gotta have Elliot on. We talk about Elliot so much. When was the last time we had Elliot on? I think we haven't had Elliot on since the Kick FM days, Drew.
No. We had him on TSN. There's no question. We had him
because he was with Sportsnet.
When he was with CBC still. He wasn't yet with Sportsnet. He was with CBC before he was with Sportsnet.
Okay, but it's been a long time. It's been a very long time.
It goes to show, to your point, though, there is that there was a significant level of interest in Jonathan Toews from some what I would describe as A-list franchises.
Yep.
You might not like what Colorado did with Mikko Rantanen, and you might disagree with that, but that's an A-list franchise. Tampa Bay, with their record of success over the last number of years, that's an A-list franchise. You heard Toronto was even involved in it, and thankfully if Jonathan Toews had spurned Winnipeg and gone to Toronto, I think people would have lost their minds. But fortunately, that's not something that
I think Colorado would have been pretty bad, Drew, with what happened recently with Brock Nelson.
No, well, and in division, I mean, think about it. So the Jets get Toews, which means that their division rival that wanted Toews doesn't get him as a result either. So I mean, there's a double benefit potentially there. But so it shows that there was interest in him. This isn't just a I'm going to use the word charity case, even though there was never any thought that there was really going to be that. A lot of teams around the league still think that Jonathan Toews has something to contribute to a franchise and to a winning franchise at that, Dave.
Yeah, and look, I'm with Ezzy. I was a little surprised by the bonus structure. I thought it'd be more tied to performance, like in terms of actually on ice performance, not necessarily
goals gets you this.
Exactly. But at the bottom line is, as Ezzy said, if you've paid Jonathan Toews $7 million next season, you are not crying. And the fact of the matter is, the salary cap is going up, and if they, as you touched on earlier in the show, Drew, if the bonuses go into next year, then you'll carry if you can't pay them out this year against the cap, then you carry them over for next year. And the Jets have a fair bit of room, even with the guys that we've talked about. Even if you need to sign Ehlers, even if you need to sign Velarde, even if you need to sign Sandberg to whatever deals they end up signing with the team, there would still be, in my estimation, room to handle these bonuses. So the bottom line is that the Jets weren't getting him at $1 million for 1 year. Plus, they had, as he touched on, other teams they had to contend with. And even though Jonathan Toews is from Winnipeg, it doesn't necessarily mean it's like, okay, I'm signing with, Colorado's offering me a $7 million deal. I'll take $1 million with you. It wasn't happening.
Right.
So the fact of the matter is that you had to pay to play, and it's a 1 year deal. And sure, you don't like it. And again, like I said, like ultimately the bottom line is the team had to agree. The team has no problem paying out this money. This was the contract they negotiated. So is it a bit heavier than I expected it to be? It was. But am I going to lose sleep over it? No, because the bottom line is that this is a deal that the Jets franchise can handle. It's not precluding them from adding, is what I'm trying to get to. I don't think it prevents them. It doesn't prevent them from signing Ehlers. It doesn't prevent them from signing any of their major guys if they want. And let's be realistic, guys. If they do not retain Nikolaj Ehlers, well, there's your money. You've got tons of money available, because let's be realistic. The Jets aren't saying, well, we didn't sign Ehlers at, let's say, 8.5. Now we've got 8.5 to play with. You're not getting someone in free agency, I don't think, who's going to be that Ehlers replacement. So ultimately, I think there's still enough money with Ehlers being signed.
Yeah.
But if Ehlers is not signed, then this is not even something we even have to have a conversation about.
Well, you're talking about the salary cap for next year. So for the year after next year, where the bonuses could potentially be allocated towards. The salary cap is going to be $104 million.
Exactly.
So, I mean, $5 million of bonuses if he achieves every bonus. And by the way, you can apply some of them still to this year's cap and then additional ones into next year. So you could do 2.5 this year and 2.5 next year. So it's not like it's an all or none sort of scenario. Part of the bonuses can be paid out still in this season,
right?
And then the additional ones can be paid out next year. I don't think that the bonuses, if they're all achieved, or if the vast majority of them are achieved, are going to be something that is going to keep anyone in the Winnipeg Jets organization awake at night. It's not like, right after COVID, where the cap was stagnant and a rookie was getting $2.5 million in bonuses, that was going to cost you a player of significance moving forward.
And to your point, I'm fairly certain the Jets in Toews jersey sales alone will more than compensate them.
Like how many jerseys have already been sold, right? Like I imagine a lot. And just going, sticking with the salary cap here, boys, because I do think it's a very fascinating salary breakdown structure. Yeah. Thank you, Drew.
Yeah.
Really, we already talked about, if the Jets go all the way and win the Stanley Cup and Toews plays half the games, well, you absolutely don't care about paying him $1.75 million. And that's what it is,
don't
right?
Pay us $1.75 million.
Exactly. So the $250,000 for winning each round and playing 50% of the games, who cares about that?
Yeah,
the $1 million for Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I'm, poo-pooing $250,000 here installments, guys. But I mean, the reality is, if he plays 60 games, he gets, I think, $2.5 million, if I'm correct here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. Well, no, more than that. A little bit more. 2.75 million, right? Yeah. So you're talking about then for Jonathan Toews to play 60 plus games, because he doesn't get more bonuses for 70 and 80 games.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
If he plays 60 plus games for the Jets,
yeah,
he gets $4.75 million. And to me, that's worth paying it, because most likely he's going to have a lot of impact in your bottom six, right? We've talked about this. We're not going to pencil him in as 2C or 3C right now. We don't know what the Jets' plans are. So you look at that and you say, okay, well, is that a little bit high? And I don't know if that's high considering his pedigree, right? Again, it's all subjective right now, right, guys? Some people are saying, no, Jonathan Toews, 25 goals, 50 points, he'll be good, right? Well, none of us know that. We can put out projections all we want. He could end up having 13 goals and 27 points. We have absolutely no idea, right? Then at that point, yeah, you're probably saying, maybe he's overpaid a little bit. But I think this is a calculated risk for the Jets. I think that's what this is. They're willing to get in front of the other teams and maybe pay him a little bit more money to get that Stanley Cup pedigree and fill a hole up the middle. Like Dave talked about, whether that's 3C or whether that's 4C, this is a guy that is going to have an impact on this team, we think. So, I think the salary cap going up is definitely a consideration, knowing that those bonuses are going to roll over when the salary cap is going to be, over $100 million.
Well, I was reading something, and I don't remember if it was Murat or if it was Kenny yesterday, talking about, that the Jets had no confidence really in anybody on the second line winning a faceoff, when they needed one. And I know that a lot of the analytical folks will say, well, you should never pay for faceoffs. Okay, fine. But, when you need to win a faceoff, when you need to win a draw, and you don't really have any, you only had confidence in maybe Scheifele or Lowry going out there to win that draw for you. Now you bring in Toews, and let's assume that, I'd be shocked if all of a sudden he's lost the ability to win a faceoff. That's something that usually, veterans are pretty, are still pretty good at knowing how to win a faceoff.
You don't lose that. It's like Dave M in baseball, Drew. He doesn't lose that home run power. It's always there.
Well, my point being that when you need a key faceoff, you now have another option, which means that, let's say Ehlers resigns or whomever, all of a sudden that second line that you could never put out there when you needed a key faceoff, all of a sudden they can be out there more, and maybe that bumps up the minutes of a Perfetti and bumps up the minutes of an Ehlers as a result of having somebody like a Toews on the ice to win key faceoffs at key moments. I mean, I think the domino effect, we're not fully aware of what the domino effect of this signing may end up being for the Winnipeg Jets. On its face, you understand it and you accept it, but I think the small details that Jonathan Toews could potentially bring to this team are not fully apparent just yet. As we sit here on June the 21st, I think you'll be able to see that sort of play itself out, assuming he's got something left in the tank. You'll see that play itself out over the course of the regular season, more so than right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what we've been talking about throughout the course of this show, Drew, is that it's not just going to be in the goals and assists that you're going to see the impact of Jonathan Toews. Mm-hmm. It's going to be teaching. I mean, I saw the comment in the chat, have Jonathan Toews sitting beside Morgan Barron and imparting his wisdom to a guy like Morgan Barron on, this is a guy who we think, oh, maybe he can take a step forward and become something more than he is. Well, maybe Jonathan Toews can really, spending a year with him will do that. And look, we know that guys, work after practice and will spend time doing that. But as you just said, when you have a guy who's a world-class hockey player, and we don't know what he has in the tank. So again, like I said, but I still think there is a value to practice. I think
easy there, AI.
I think there's actually this whole
the
show.
Original AI.
Yeah, this whole show is being done by AI. But no, I do think that there is going to be that's that intangible that you cannot quantify. That, showing Cole Perfetti how to win faceoffs, showing Gabriel Velarde how to get better at that. This team will use that wisdom, and that's what we've talked about. It's not just his on ice. Well, the on ice results will come from what they gain through talking to a player of his ilk. And so the Jets have never had anyone on their team. Like, you go through the list, right? They've had guys who have won Stanley Cups before, but they have never had a player of this level. And he's at the end of his career, but it's the end of a Hall of Fame career who can help be there every single day, showing this team what it takes to get to that next level. And I've long spoken about this idea that they have guys who have great individual success. We saw it throughout the course of this year, right, Ezzy? But at the end of the day, not many of these guys have won a hockey championship at the pro level. And so for me, getting a guy like Toews to assist in so many different capacities, I'm just intrigued by it. I'm not here, again, I will reiterate this point. I'm not here to make any grand pronouncements as to what Jonathan Toews is going to, I can't say he's going to have, 15 goals, 20 goals, 30 goals, Ezzy, but I can tell you, I think he's going to have an impact. What I can make a definitive statement about is I think he will have an impact in those small intangibles of teaching guys how to play the game better.
Well, Dave, he's not going to score 30 goals because he doesn't get a performance bonus for the 30 goals. It's only games played. But I think what you're trying to say, Dave, is let's keep an open mind here. Yeah. That's what it is. Like Drew said, we're sitting here on June 21st. Like, we're a long way from training camp. And I hope that it lasts even longer than it. I hope it feels, I should say, longer than that, because I think we all are looking forward to having, a July and August break where my finger's
just going to be on July the 12th after the show ends. My finger's just going to be hovering over the block button for both of your phone numbers, and I just massively hit that very quickly as the show wraps up on July.
It's okay, Dave and I will just show up to whatever beach you're at, Drew, so it doesn't matter.
No clue where I'll be.
No, like, we're talking about some uncertainty, but we're also talking about a different type of player, and I think that's the point here. And just to separate from all of the talk about usage and how many points he's going to get and everything like that, I think is a little bit too premature. We have to not just wait for training camp, Dave, but we have to wait until a few preseason games and a few regular season games and see like how he clicks with his line mates. Because we don't know, right? There's going to be turnover this year on the Jets when you consider all the RFAs and UFAs in the forward group. We talked about the defense. The defense is pretty set. I mean, there could always be movement. I mean, the Jets could always bring in someone via trade or maybe via free agency, even though, the Jets haven't really filled those roles. But when you're talking about, Morrissey and DeMello and Samberg and Pionk, these guys, Miller, these guys are locked up, right? So it's the forward group. And, Drew, just to kind of squirrel here for a second or pivot, like there is going to be some turnover in that bottom six. And when you look at, whether it's the Florida Panthers or some of the teams that have had a lot of success, like these are all important signings, right? And yes, I think they're going to be able to fill some of them internally. Like Dave mentioned, Nikita Chibrikov is a guy we're going to be talking a lot about, I think, come September as kind of a potential replacement for Mason Appleton, whether that's, the third line or fourth line. But I mean, we're talking about a second line who could potentially have two new players on it, right? One of which could be Jonathan Toews, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts here. And when it comes to Jonathan Toews, I mentioned this off the top of the show. I just think this is a great news story for the Jets. Like, this is the type of thing, if you would have told a Jets fan 5 or 6 years ago that Johnny Toews is going to finish his career in Winnipeg at 37 years old. And yes, maybe we didn't know that he was going to be out for 2 years. I think this is just a win-win positive story for Jets fans.
Is this the most significant free agent signing that the Jets have made?
Well, what about the Olli Jokinen signing, Drew?
Well, I mean, I saw.
No, I'm obviously joking.
I know, but I saw
it's up there.
say...
It's up there for sure. I mean, I'll go quickly and then let Dave get in here. I mean, we know that the Jets.
They've signed players for longer, certainly.
Right, but most of the Jets players on the roster right now and for the last several years have been guys that have been drafted or acquired via trade, right? You're talking about the Nino Niederreiters, the Vlad Nemesnikovs, the Gabe Vilardis. I mean, the Jets don't have a lot of guys that they have signed via free agency, right? Even going back to the summer where the Jets acquired Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon on the back end, right, Dave? Like Chevy has done most of his work on the trade market. And so, yes, I think this contract is up. I mean, like, who else are we talking about here? I mean, I don't think Dmitry Kulikov is in the same ballpark, even though he's got 2 Stanley Cup rings now.
Do you remember when Kulikov signed and it was 3 years, 3.1 or whatever? And
no, it was 3 years. It was like 4.3 million per season.
No. But whatever fine, whatever. But my point was that I remember hearing the number and we're like, okay, 4 years, that's, total. And then you're like, oh, wait, that's per. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's a little different.
Well, he turned out to be a Stanley Cup champion, right? So maybe that wasn't that bad of a contract, right, Dave? But no, I think this is definitely, if it's not the biggest free agent signing for the Jets, it's one of them. And let's see what happens here, guys. Like, I think, we just talked about it. Like, the Jets have other work to do. There's the uncertainty surrounding Nick Ehlers, and there's other players that the Jets are going to have to sign, most likely in their bottom 6 and having to fill out kind of depth roles. But I think right now it's really intriguing. It's just fun to think about what Jonathan Toews is going to be able to do on the Jets. Like Dave said, we've said this, like, the word of the day probably is uncertainty, or we don't know. We don't have a crystal ball to be able to see what's going to happen. But I think this is just, at least in the current moment, it's very exciting to think of the possibilities of Johnny Toews and the Jets having success together.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no reason to.
Sorry, there was a little Freudian slip there.
Yeah, we heard. It's okay. We just tried.
I tried to move past it. I did smirk a little, unfortunately, but.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything, and then I looked over at the top right and saw Dave with his little smirk, and I can't resist. So,
I mean, look, I would say, like, Matty Perreault was
in terms of impact. Matty Perreault was, it was hugely impactful. I mean, that was the definition of found money in a.
And I think they signed him to a 4-year.
Yeah,
$4 million a year deal, which was perfectly reasonable.
No, that was not. That was the re-signing. That was
his initial one. His initial one was just a 1-year deal, wasn't it?
Oh, was it?
Was it 1 or 2 years? I can't remember.
I mean, that's going back 8 or 9 years now.
Yeah. So I think, like, Perreault would be, like, not. I mean, again, from the biggest, that was the most consequential.
I miss Matty Perreault.
Yeah, he was a beauty. Here's a guy. Do you remember when Jacob Trouba was not wanting to sign in Winnipeg, and that was all the scuttlebutt? And he's like, if he doesn't want to be here, we don't want him here. I was like, okay, not expecting. Everybody else was, like, being very, like, down the middle, and Matty Perreault, and that's why Matty Perreault is doing he's like hockey media out in Quebec right now. But
the first contract was a 3-year, $9 million contract, I think.
Okay,
I'm looking at that,
which was a great contract.
Oh yeah.
Right. But I'm just saying, like, but again, there's two different questions. Is, like, that wasn't the biggest name. That was a name. Okay, they were able to, get him, and that was a good signing, and it turned out to be phenomenal, and he was an excellent player for the Winnipeg Jets. But from a name cachet perspective, no. I mean, obviously getting a Jonathan Toews, especially when, again, like I said, it's not
Toews has got cachet, baby.
He's got cachet. But the other thing also is that it wasn't like the Jets were his only option. That's the other thing people need to, like, kind of, like, this was a guy who was desired by a number of other NHL teams, and not the Anaheim. I mean, I know I heard his name with Anaheim previously, but my point is, it wasn't just the bottom feeding teams saying, okay, well, we can get a guy who can come in and help some of our younger players. But as you said, Drew, Colorado, who's expected to be, in the Central next year. You've got Tampa Bay, who wants to be, who feels like they still got something left in the tank. So you've got teams that were interested in signing this player. So yeah, I would say it probably is from a name perspective, the biggest signing. Whether it's the most consequential signing is a separate question.
Yeah, time will tell on that front. But in terms of, Stanley Cup pedigree, a guy with options, the fact that, he chose to come back to Winnipeg, to his hometown, is certainly a boon for everybody involved. It's, we'll see how it plays out on the ice. But for the now, and as we sit here in the middle of June, it certainly is a good news story. And we'll see what the domino effect of it all is.
That's all I'm saying, right, Drew? Like, let's just see what happens here. Like you said,
sure.
I mean, it's the summer. It's a great story. Let's not get too preoccupied with, maybe they gave him too much money, or maybe he's not going to be able to play well enough for 2C. Like, it's like
we don't know any of this, Ezzy. That's
exactly
the beauty of it, right? Like, we nobody knows. Like, the Jets don't know. Jonathan Toews doesn't know. Nobody in the chat knows. The three bozos on the screen don't know. All the bozos who are writing about this don't know. I mean, look, it's kind of like
you don't know who Bozo the Clown is.
It's kind of akin to the idea that, when trades are made and our media colleagues will be like, oh, this is the grade. This is what, and it's like, this is the dumbest thing I'm reading in my life. And I don't share them anymore, and I don't read them because, like, who cares? We won't know until years from now. Why am I reading this? You're not going to talk about this in 2 years when we actually do have an indication. So again, the speculation nation is again, understand it's part of the business, but it's like, there's no, you're right. Again, it's not about like waving our pom-poms and being like, this is the greatest thing ever. We don't have any idea what it's going to be. And we're going to be fascinated to bring everyone that story all throughout the course of next season.
No question about it. Marty Biron, our good friend, he's up next on the program Saturday morning. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show is presented by Play Now, and it continues after these important commercial messages.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now, you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
Bottom of hour number 2. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. We're thrilled to be joined by our good friend, Marty Biron. Marty, good morning. How are you? Thanks for joining us on this summer's day.
Doing really good. I wish I was in South Florida, kind of seeing what the Stanley Cup parties are like in real time. I'm seeing it through social media, and it looks pretty crazy, but yeah, that looks like a fun time down there from the Panthers.
I don't think they've slept yet. I mean, Barkov going around and waking up his neighbors on their Ring cameras, at 4 in the morning.
That was at like 4 or 5 a.m. Yeah, and I saw an interview AJ Greer's parents, because I was doing some work with RDS, and they ran an interview, and the first question was, how much sleep have you guys had? And they're like, not much at all. And AJ Greer's mom said, I actually was supposed to go back to work. I've got a few more weeks, a couple of months before I retire. And I am staying now until the parade. So sorry, people at work, but I'm not coming back.
That's the perk you get when your son wins the Stanley Cup.
Yes.
So I think they'll excuse that absence for Mrs. Greer in this case. Marty obviously brought you on, talk about everything going around the league. Got to start here in Winnipeg, though.
Yeah.
Jonathan Toews, the announcement yesterday that he's going to sign with the Winnipeg Jets. Just from an outsider sort of perspective, the significance of Jonathan Toews to the Winnipeg community. He hasn't played in the NHL for a couple of years at this point in time. If you're a player of that pedigree, Jonathan Toews' pedigree, Gabe Landeskog's pedigree, when they battle so hard to come back and eventually make their returns, these guys know they're going through the efforts because they know that they still have more to give, right? That they know that they still maybe aren't going to be at their peak as performers, but that they can still contribute to teams moving forward.
More to give is debatable because they don't know, right? Like Jonathan Toews' last 2 seasons, 37 and 31 points, not healthy. So you're thinking, okay, like what's the bare minimum here? Could it be 30 points? Could it be 40 points? Nobody knows. His last full season, the year that it was shut down with COVID in 2019-20, he had 60 points in 70 games. Mm-hmm. But we're talking about 6 years ago. So that's where it's such an unknown. The one thing from Jonathan Toews is he brings experience. And the only place in the NHL that it made sense to bring Jonathan Toews was the Winnipeg Jets. There's plenty of other teams that I think were interested, kicking tires, whatnot. But I didn't feel like it made sense. It was trying to fit somebody into a lineup that maybe needed other things. The Jets are a great team. They won the President's Trophy last year. They need a second-line center. Well, who knows? Maybe Jonathan Toews is your third-line center, and you elevate Adam Lowry to second-line center, and you can put a pin in it and say, let's hold off. Let's see what comes out of it. We don't need to make the decision now, but maybe we will look at it in season if that doesn't work. But I really feel that the only place it made sense was Winnipeg. Everywhere else would have been a good story, but I don't think it would have made this. And plus, Winnipeg needs that winning, history, right? Like 3 Stanley Cups. When you're, the Jets have not won 2 rounds since what, like 2018 is the last time they went to the conference finals. Mm-hmm. Like the next year, Jonathan Toews got 81 points. Like that's crazy to think that you look back and you say the Jets have not had success in the playoffs, like further down than what Jonathan Toews has had success in the regular season. So that to me, that's why the Jets made total sense.
Marty, you faced Jonathan Toews many times throughout your career. And I wanted to ask you, what, in your opinion, makes him so special? Because obviously this is a guy that most people expect to be in the Hall of Fame. Like, yes, there's questions about he's 37 years old and, how much is left in the tank and can he be the 2C and everything like that. But from your perspective, playing against him, what stands out to you about obviously a very special player?
So, you just said something. Can he be the 2C? That would be like off the table for me. Like you're not even thinking about that because I don't think Jonathan Toews can give you that production, that element of, hey, he's a second line center. Can he be a bottom 6 center? Yes. And can he work his way to that? Maybe. But that's not where I would start. Okay, so Jonathan Toews when I played against him. Like, very smart, very under control the whole time, emotionally under control, great hands, sneaky a little bit. That's why he was so good in the shootout or breakaways or penalty shot. I remember a game in New York. I was with the Rangers. And this is the only game, and the reason why I remember it, because I had gotten brown, old-looking equipment for the Winter Classic. I only wore that gear twice that season. When I backed up Lundqvist in the Winter Classic in Philadelphia, and then about 3 weeks later, we played a game at Madison Square Garden against the Chicago Blackhawks, and we were going to wear the Winter Classic jersey. So I'm like, I'm going to wear my brown gear. It's going to be great. And in the first period, I gave up 3 goals. One was on a penalty shot by Jonathan Toews. He came in and beat me 5-0. And I was like, this guy, like, he's impossible to read. Like, I was trying to read. Where's he going to go? Like, is he deking? Is he shooting? And boom, it's 5-0. I'm like, what just happened here? And I think that's why he was so good, right? In shootouts and international hockey. So that's what you're getting. Now, the execution has to follow the smarts and the hockey sense and the calmness and all of that. And I think it's going to take a little bit of time to get that execution. But look, I'm not worried about the Jets in the regular season next year. I think they still have a fantastic team. They still have a fantastic goalie, a great coach, a great roster. So you're making the playoffs. Okay, can Jonathan Toews have 82 games of getting back to a level that is going to put the Jets over the top in the playoffs? That's really what I'm looking at. But he's got all the tools. It's just he hasn't played in 2 years, and really he hasn't been healthy and playing since we shut down in March of 2020. So that's a long time.
You know, Marty, and you're right. We won't know until the season begins what he is going to have to bring. But from a intangibles perspective, you know, you talk about the winning pedigree and that something that is largely absent from this Jets group, other than obviously Luke Schenn, who came in with the Stanley Cup, but before him, nobody else had a cup on this team. From your perspective, what can a guy, even if he doesn't necessarily have it at the same level he did back in 2019-20, can do for players like Morgan Barron, Cole Perfetti, Gabriel Velarde, and imparting that wisdom of, you know, what his skill set is to help these guys get to that next level?
Yeah, no disrespect to Schenn, but if you bring in Jonathan Toews, who was given the cup by Gary Bettman 3 times, and then, you know, twice. I don't think he was a captain the first time. Maybe he was. I don't know. But anyway, like, that's the difference, right? Okay, so you mentioned Morgan Barron, Cole Perfetti, the younger guys. Yes, I think there's an impact to be had right there. But for me, I'm looking at look at what happened against St. Louis this year, right? The struggles when you look at Connor Hellebuck, and the struggles when, you know, Morrissey was getting hit hard and it was physical, and you're like, and then Scheifele, and okay, how about Jonathan Toews helping the ones that you don't think need much help, but they do. Everybody does. Everybody, you know, unless you've won, like you always need somebody to help you get to there. So how about you're playing the St. Louis Blues and Jonathan Toews is in your locker room, and after, you know, game 6 or whatever, going into game 7, you're like, we're fine. Let's go. Like, I remember in 2010, this happened. I remember in 2015, this happened. Like, there's stories to be told for not just the young players, but the veterans that have never done it. And I think that's why it's so important to have a player like Jonathan Toews. Now, teams have done it with Corey Perry, right? Corey Perry, 5 cups in the last 6 years. Well, 5 Stanley Cup finals. He hasn't won, but he still has won one, and he's gotten the team to the Stanley Cup final. And his experience is not just good on the younger kid. It's good on McDavid. It's good on Draisaitl. It's good on everybody. Pat Maroon, like, following, you know, all these teams to winning cups. Like, that's the experience you need. Do they have a huge impact at the end of the playoffs when you look at the goals and assists? And not as huge as others, but they're all behind the scenes getting it done. And that's what Jonathan Toews can do, in my opinion. I think that's why you're entertaining this. Name me somebody that hasn't played in 3 years that's saying, I'm going to come back. I'm healthy. I'm coming back and we would talk as much about it. No, it's because Jonathan Toews has all these intangibles.
From a leadership perspective, we'd heard all season about how tight-knit the Jets dressing room was. We know that they have a very good core and a captain and a leader in Adam Lowry. Now you're bringing in somebody by the nickname of Captain Serious, who has that pedigree that you just spoke about. How so, not difficult necessarily, but integrating that into the dressing room, or integrating Jonathan Toews' leadership attributes within Adam Lowry and Josh Morrissey and Mark Scheifele's leadership attributes. How difficult, maybe not difficult, but how will that sort of take time to sort of play itself out at the start of the season?
I don't think it's going to take too long. Look, I was with the Rangers when we brought in Brad Richards. The Rangers had some, really, really good leaders. Henrik Lundqvist was one of them, and we had Ryan Callahan as a captain and whatnot, but Brad Richards came in. We all knew why Brad Richards was coming in. He had won in Tampa. He had been great in Dallas. He had brought in another level. So that was easy. When Richie spoke, everybody listened. Didn't matter who you were. And Jonathan Toews is at another level when it comes to leadership. Let's take Sidney Crosby, for example, but let's not use the on-ice performances and the goals and assists. But if all of a sudden Sidney Crosby came to your team, you would be like, yeah, we're going to listen to him. He's not going to wreck the ship. He's not going to come in and wreck the locker room. We're going to listen to him. Jonathan Toews is the same level of leadership as Sidney Crosby. Jonathan Toews has won 3 cups. Sidney Crosby's won 3 cups. Like they're the same level of leadership. He's not coming in to wreck anything. And I love it. I love it that they already have a good room, because it makes it easier to say, hey, come on in. Let's use your wisdom. Let's use your experience. If it was a bad room, now you're putting it all on Jonathan Toews' shoulders, and you're like, hey, fix this. Oh, wait a minute. Like, I got to think about my game. I got to think about what I can do. I have to perform. I have to play well. Like, this is going to be so much easier for him to be able to have that impact, because it is a good room. So that to me is why this again fits. Like, I would never bring Jonathan Toews in to say, how about you wave your magic wand in the locker room and fix this? Like, no, that's not what he can do now, but he can definitely be a lot of help.
Marty, we're talking a lot about Stanley Cups that Jonathan Toews won, but I want to get back to the Stanley Cup that was just awarded, the Florida Panthers winning their 2nd cup in a row. And I think you'd agree that in those last 2 games, we really saw what the Florida Panthers can do, probably a little bit more lopsided than people were expecting, based on the fact that 3 of the first 4 games went to overtime. But I wanted to ask you about Connor McDavid, because obviously his future in Edmonton is already being talked about. I'm sure that you've already talked about it, but what is your kind of assessment of the situation right now? And it's early, and he's got 1 year left on his deal, but I mean, if you're Connor McDavid and you've gone to 2 Stanley Cup finals in a row, you must be thinking, is this the right place for me to be long term, right?
I'm sure you're talking to your family and your agent about it, whatnot. The one thing with Connor McDavid is that we all know what his value is, right? Like 20% of the cap is the maximum number you can sign as a player. So this coming year is 95.5. So you're looking at, it's about 19 million a year. And a year from now, it'll be over 100 million. So if he signs later, maybe that pushes this to 20 million. But I think that the value is somewhere in the 18 to 19 million dollar range, on a long-term contract. And that's like, we don't have to debate that. Everybody knows what the value is. The Oilers know what the value is. McDavid knows what the value is. It's not like Marner in Toronto where you're like, okay, what's Marner's value? Or Bennett in Florida or whatever. There's a few millions up and down. It could be anywhere in there. We know the value of McDavid. The difference here is, well, does Connor McDavid want to be in Edmonton? And are the Oilers doing everything they can to put another team next year that is going to challenge for a Stanley Cup? They're still one of the favorites to win the cup next year because they have McDavid and Draisaitl, and but the priority for me, if I was the Oilers, I'd say, okay, maybe they really like Stuart Skinner. Maybe they really like Calvin Pickard, but we got to do what the Colorado Avalanche did. And we got to, just change our crease. And we can't do it in October or November. We got to do it now. And maybe that tells Connor McDavid, look, we are giving you the tools. They got to sign Evan Bouchard. And I not in that locker room, but I would think that for Connor McDavid to have Evan Bouchard sign is huge, showing that, hey, we're committed to have, the main pieces going forward. And so there's a lot of work that they have to do, Stan Bowman and the Oilers, to make sure that everything that happens this summer is for McDavid to say, yes, I'll sign the extension. And that extension has to be signed, in my opinion, before the regular season. Can you imagine the circus that would be next year if every week, every month, we're talking about McDavid potentially being a UFA, being a trade target at the trade deadline? And oh my gosh, that would be absolutely insane. That'd fill out, shows week after week after week here, and it would be awesome. But for the Oilers, it wouldn't be awesome. So they need to get that extension done before the season starts, because if not, let's start the rumor mill, because it will be crazy.
Marty, every team, when they win the Stanley Cup, the 31 other teams start to say, what can we do to look like them? Do you think that this is now the Florida Panthers have now set a new tempo? Because and the question is, do you think this team is going to stick together? Because I saw a quote from Aaron Ekblad today who said, Florida's home and these things get done at the last minute. Bennett wants to stay. Marchand, well, it sounds like Marchand might be gone. But from your perspective, is this setting a new tempo, or is it unrealistic for 31 teams to pivot and say, we're going to look like that?
Well, a couple of things. I really feel like the Florida Panthers are going to try to bring everybody back. And look, Marchand's great. If they don't have him, can they replace him on that third line? Probably. He's 37, right? So, but he had a huge impact in the playoffs. For me, the one that I thought was going to be gone is Aaron Ekblad. They brought in Seth Jones. Like, you can move on from Ekblad, and Ekblad could probably get a lot on the free agent market. He's a right shot defenseman. Everybody wants a right shot defenseman. So, I thought Bennett, Marchand were going to stay. Ekblad was going to be gone. Maybe that's more Bennett, Ekblad stay, Marchand's gone. I don't know. But here's the thing with the Florida Panthers. I had that discussion with Craig Button yesterday, and it was so funny because I'm like, everybody's so impressed with the way that the Florida Panthers have won now back-to-back cups. Well, that's no different than the Tampa Bay Lightning and the way they won their back-to-back cups. Remember, they brought in Barclay Goodrow and Blake Coleman, and they made this third line with Yanni Gourde. It was like, that's the key. You got to have three lines. Oh, and you know what that also is like? When Pittsburgh won their back-to-back cups. They had Bonino, Kessel. They had Carl Hagelin. That was their third line. And Craig Button is like, Marty, what about the Montreal Canadiens and the New York Islanders and the Edmonton Oilers of the 70s and 80s? It was their depth, their third line. And I'm like, the mold is never change. You got to stay healthy, number one. I really feel the Oilers were not healthy, and it affected them. And the Dallas Stars were not healthy, and that affected them as well. And you got to stay healthy. And two, that third line is huge. Maybe they're not having the best of regular seasons. Maybe the numbers are not there. But when you get to the playoffs, they need to perform, and they need to be difference makers. So that's what Florida did. That's what Tampa did. That's what Pittsburgh did. That's what the teams that have had success. And I'm talking about not just winning one cup and disappearing, being in cup finals 3 years in a row, winning back-to-back. That's because they had 1, 2, 3. They had a top 9 that could go against anybody.
Marty Biron, our guest Saturday morning, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Post-game, after the Panthers won the Cup, Marty, this quote from Matthew Tkachuk certainly got eyebrows raised. Heart meets talent. Our team was a team. When things were getting hard for them, they looked to one guy. But our team does it collectively. And that's why we're lifting the Stanley Cup right now, because we are a team and not a bunch of individuals. Is there truth to that comment from Matthew Tkachuk, or is he just being a little bit of the bleep disturber that he so enjoys playing that role?
I think Matthew Tkachuk still is not over losing the Four Nations face-off, because that's one shot at McDavid. He took another one drunk at the bars, and Connor McDavid, who? Like, and I get it, but that is some deep, deep feelings that are buried down that he wants to let out, right? So we'll see what happens in the Olympics next year. Like, that's going to be fun again. But look, do I want Connor McDavid on my team? 100%. Do I think that the Oilers look to McDavid a little bit too much? Yeah, but what else were they supposed to do? Sure. Zach Hyman was injured. Connor Brown was not 100%. Matthias Ekholm was injured, not 100%. Evander Kane, look, I feel like Evander Kane ran out of juice. And the difference in the first 3 rounds of the playoffs was the depth of the Oilers showed up, because Evander Kane and Zach Hyman had a big impact. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins had a big impact. Then all of a sudden, RNH is injured as well. So who else was going to be leading the way? I'd ask the Florida Panthers the question, okay, if Barkov was banged up and Reinhart was banged up and Tkachuk and Bennett were, and who would you look for, right? Like, I mean, you have to do what you have to do. And unfortunately, all these things happen to the Oilers. So I think it's Tkachuk taking a shot. I think the Florida Panthers are playing the villain card perfectly. Marchand has the loser sticker. That's the Oilers logo, but he's taking shots at all the teams that have given up players. Thank you, Jets, for Paul Maurice. Thank you, Flames, for Bennett and Tkachuk. Thank you, Sabres, for Reinhardt. Thank you, Tampa, Chicago, whatever, for Verhaeghe. He's listing them all, right? I think they are playing that card to a T, and it's awesome because we get entertained. But what were the Oilers supposed to do? They really did not have their team the way they wanted to go head-to-head with Florida, especially in game 4, 5, 6 of the series.
I think you're absolutely right. The Oilers were banged up, and Marty, that time of year, this time of year, all these guys are a lot of these guys are banged up. But I think you're right. I think it was clearly evident in the last few games. And I wanted to switch over to free agency coming up. You mentioned Mitch Marner earlier, and I know you're going to be on the air broadcasting, and there's going to be a lot of. I think you'll agree. Well, I'll ask you the question, but with the salary cap going up to $95.5 million, are you expecting it to really be a free agent frenzy? Because when you talk about Mitch Marner, I don't know what he's going to get, $12 million a year, $13 million a year, but I think there's going to be more than a few players that you're going to see the contracts they sign, and you're going to be a little bit surprised.
I think Jeff Finger's going to sign again. Jeff Finger's going to sign for another 4 years.
What was it the 1 year? I mean, the Sabres signed Calaposo. There was a lot of players that signed 7 years, $7 million a year, and it really didn't pan out. But look, that Brian Burke has a great quote. He says, July 1 is when a lot of GMs make big mistakes. And, with the cap going up, there's going to be some GMs that are going to make huge mistakes. I don't think it's a mistake to sign Mitch Marner to $12, $13 million. No. I don't think it's a mistake to sign Nick Ehlers at $9 million or whatever. These guys are going to perform. It's the other contracts that are being signed, the players that maybe were going to fall, off of that, and then they're being overpaid. They're being overtermed, right? They're giving out 7-year deal when you should only give those guys 3 or 4. So that's the thing. It's funny because I look at the team's cap space, and there's a lot of teams that have a lot of cap space. And one of the team is the Sabres have $21 million in cap space, and a lot of the local media are like, Sabres should go out and make big trades and acquire players. They have all that cap space. I'm like, wait a second. There's still some internal work to be done. In Buffalo, you got to sign Bo Byram, or if you don't sign him, you probably trade him. Got to sign JJ Peterka, got to sign Ryan McLeod. Those 3 players alone will probably cost you $18 million. So now all of a sudden you're like, what? We got $2 million left. That's over. So July 1 comes, and there's teams that are going to say we're spending in free agency, but there's also teams that are going to say, wait a second, we have $8 million allocated for this player. We have 7 for this one. We have 3 for that one. There goes $18 million. We don't have the money to go out and spend. And so that's what Dallas is doing right now. Dallas is looking at their cap space and, okay, we got to got to get rid. We got to get rid of money. Jason Robertson may be gone, because they have players to sign. So to me, that's buyer beware on July 1, not for the Mariners of this world or whatever. It's for the next tier guys that you overpay.
Marty, you mentioned JJ Peterka. You talk about two of your former teams, the Sabres and the Rangers.
Yeah.
What do you think about in terms of offer sheets? Because that seems to be more of the conversation this summer. Again, we saw what the Blues did with the Oilers last year. So, how realistic, not necessarily specific to Peterka, but how realistic do you think it is continued into this summer?
So I think what the Blues did last year was so smart. It was targeting not the top guys, the middle, a team that probably didn't have the cap space, needed to make some moves. So that's what you got to do when you look at offer sheet. If a team wants to offer sheet JJ Peterka, I think it becomes easy for the Sabres to just match it, right? Because it's like the Carolina Hurricanes saying, thank you, Montreal Canadiens, for offer sheeting and negotiating with Sebastian Aho. It made our job easy. Now we have a price. We either sign it or we don't. And they did, and he stayed in Carolina. So, but the big thing for me, if you're JJ Peterka and you're about to hit a big contract, you want term. You want 7 years. You want 8 years with the Sabres maybe, but 7 years if it's another team. The problem is the way that the offer sheet compensation is laid out. And I didn't realize that until this past year. So let's say JJ Peterka gets 7 years at $7 million, $49 million offer sheet. He agrees with, the Washington Capitals to 7 years, $7 million. I'm just taking Capitals. Yeah. Well, then the Sabres are like, oh, okay. But the compensation is not $7 million. You look at the compensation, you divide it by 5. Yeah. So you can't divide it by more than 5. So if it's a 3-year deal, you divide it by 3. But so now all of a sudden it's like a $10 million AAV that you are getting compensation for. Why would a team do that? Why would a team give JJ Peterka 7 years at a lot of money, knowing that all of a sudden your compensation is another tier or 2 above?
Right.
And why would JJ Peterka sign only a 5-year deal where he could get 7 years from the Sabres, the term, guaranteed money and all of that? So for those type of players, I think it becomes problematic that you want to sign a long-term deal, but you can't really do that in an offer sheet because the compensation jumps big time because you got to divide it by 5.
You know what? It'll be fascinating. July 1st, right around the corner, but we got the draft next week as well, and there's usually some headlines that come out of that. The decentralized draft. Marty Biron will be all over it. He's a great friend of our program. Marty, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your insight as always.
Anytime. Thank you, guys. Enjoy the weekend.
Likewise,
have a great summer, Marty.
Yes. Well, you know what? I was going to say, enjoy the weekend and enjoy Game 7 of the NBA tomorrow. I don't know if you guys are basketball fans, but it's going to be crazy. I cannot wait to see. I think Indiana pulls it off. I don't
really. You think they go into OKC and they win?
I like it.
What has Indiana done to make you feel like they can't? Like Marty, they've done it.
The road team is, I think, in Game 7, there's only been 20 Game 7s, I think, in the NBA, and I think the road team's only won 5 of them. So it's a low proportion, but Indiana's really good.
Well, we'll wait.
Halliburton has somehow got, I don't know what they gave him in his leg, but he looked totally fine in Game 6. So
Marty, your prediction is good enough for me. I'm putting all of the money I have in my bank account, which is about $10.
Do not bet the farm. Do not follow my advice.
Marty, thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
Take care. Marty Biron, our good friend, joining us this morning on the program.
A lot of people thought that was going to be a 5-game series, by the way.
The fact that it's gone 7 is a surprise. You're right about that.
And they got lucky in the fact that the game's not till tomorrow night, right? So they don't have to worry. They can get another day of rest.
Well, but you guys know what school SGA went to, right?
Kentucky, obviously.
Thank you. Very good. There you go. So that's why
I'm cheering. Go Big Blue.
There you go. Go Big Blue. I'll cheer for OKC.
And he's Canadian.
And he's Canadian as well.
Although they do have a champion. I mean, I kind of always pull for a team that's never won, a city that's never won before. And I know technically the franchise in OKC has never won, but they did win is Seattle. So I kind of go Indiana, small city, small state. Kind of got to go Indiana on this one. So I'm hoping for them.
I'll give a shout out to our buddy Ari Potash, who lives in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I was there for his wedding. So shout out to the good folks in Indiana, and Ari, if you're listening.
There you go. If he's listening, that
now, Drew, hold on. Before you cut out, we do have there's some news and notes.
Okay.
Because I mean, Ezzy will be enjoying this one.
Oh yeah, here we go. Here it's time for Markus Loponen.
Markus Loponen update, everybody.
2024 fifth rounder. Markus Loponen, fifth rounder, right? Fifth rounder, Markus Loponen. He is back off to Finland. He is signed with HPK, a 2-year deal after playing last year in Victoria. I saw some comments being like, oh, the Jets lost him. I'm like, well, they didn't lose him. They still control him for another 3 years. So we'll see what happens. But
Drew, it's only a matter of time before Dave flies to Helsinki.
I might light up a cigarette just listening to Dave give these updates.
Well, anyway, so he is off back to Finland after playing 1 year in Victoria with in the WHL. And the only other question mark right now, folks, speaking of fifth rounders from 2021, Dmitry Rashevsky. Yes. He signed an offer. Speaking of offer sheet, he signed an offer sheet, and then Dynamo, I think, or whichever team, he had a chance to match it. And so it was supposed to be a week. It's been a lot longer than the week. So we're waiting to see what apparently his agent tweeted out a picture of 3 teams, none of which were the North American Winnipeg Jets. So it seems like the Russian, I wouldn't call him a prospect at this point, but maybe kind of a quasi prospect at 2021 draft pick. He is looking like he'll stay in the KHL.
Was that as good for you, Ezzy, as it was for me?
It was. I'm going to light my cigarette now.
Guys, Jets information is Jets information. And I know people go to illegalcurve.com to get it every single day. We appreciate that. But, sometimes when I can deliver it live, we'll deliver it live. And the other thing, Drew, we should mention.
Yes.
And we'll remember there's potential for a number of shows next week. I mean, we got draft coverage coming for everyone. So make sure you're staying tuned for that.
There you go. Exactly right. Stay tuned. Keep it locked to illegalcurve.com. Keep it locked to all of our social media channels. And we'll keep you up to date on everything to do with the Winnipeg Jets.
T. Conapoli wants a Tyrell Bauer update.
Do you have one?
No. I mean, I know where he went on vacation, but
I think where did he go, Dave?
I'm not sure if I'm supposed to disclose that. So I can say he went with Matt Rempe. That's all I can say.
There you go. They went on vacation.
Ty's probably just enjoying the summer in Alberta right now.
That's it for us. Big thank you to our friends and our sponsors, our good friends, of course, at Play Now. They're the title sponsor. Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Holt Dental, Boston Pizza, City Place, Seagram's, and our friends, of course, at Wheatland Hockey as well. As we mentioned, illegalcurve.com, all of our social media channels. Keep it locked to there for all your latest Winnipeg Jets news and any developments that happen over the course of the week. We'll have them there for you as well. If you haven't already done so, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn your notifications on. That way you'll get alerted when we go live each and every time here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Big thanks to Mitchell Clinton. Big thanks to Marty Biron. In case you missed either of those interviews, they will be available on the immediate replay on the YouTube channel and on the podcast, which will soon be available as well. Big thanks to all of you for chatting with us. Big thanks to Dave Minuk and Ezra Ginsburg. I am your host, Drew Mindell. We remind you that if it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.